This first one I'm going to be talking about 10 years of being nomadic and why I have decided to basically settle down in Lisbon after essentially 10 years of being nomadic and, having lots of different home bases throughout the years, but never really having my own home base where I'm like, this is me, this is mine, this is where I want to settle. Essentially my whole life I have borrowed homes, Even when you grow up with your family, you borrow your mom and dad's home. It's not really yours, and so it was quite a foreign concept to me for me to have my own place and actually settle, because it kind of feels scary. It was just a foreign feeling. I have thought I would answer a few questions that I get on a frequent basis just from people, and I collated them all, and so here are a few. Why did I travel for so long? It's like no one has to travel for 10 years. What led me to keep traveling and not settle down? Did I ever imagine myself settling in one place when I did start traveling? Was that my goal? The reason why I started traveling was really, I grew up in New Zealand, for those who don't know, and New Zealand, 3 tiny little islands on the Pacific. Life is not that exciting, at least for me. I felt really stifled. I just wanted to see the world. I kind of felt like island life is amazing, and I love my islands, believe me. I love beaches, ocean, islands, all the things. I just felt so disconnected from the world, and we had family in, say, Hong Kong, Canada, UK, China, and just all over the world. New Zealand didn't really feel like home to me. I never felt like I quite belonged there, and I think it was that sense of the wanting to belong to a place, to a community. I never really had that feeling in New Zealand, sadly. I don't know why. I left because I was chasing that feeling of where is my place in this world? Where do I belong? Is there a place in this world where I belong? For those of you who don't know, I was born in Singapore. I grew up in New Zealand. My dad is from Hong Kong, mum is from Shanghai. We have family sort of all over the world. The first 5 years of my life, I didn't really have a home. I had lots. I think I had 10 different homes before the age of 8 or something. That really played into not really knowing where you belong. Where is home? Is this another temporary home, right? So that's a very interesting way to grow up. And it also gave me the sense of what's the word for it? Travel bug, travel lust. And whenever we were in New Zealand for too long and we stopped traveling, I would get really bored. I would be craving a trip away. Of course, being from New Zealand, it's really hard to fly across the world. It's really, really long distances. So I remember the year I turned 20, I had a relationship that didn't work out, and I just wanted to leave the country. As you do. And I applied to study abroad in Vienna and in Austria. I remember it was the first time I went back to Europe as an adult, and this time really on my own. It was my first international trip so far away from New Zealand. It was so crazy to me, and it was such a big deal at the time. And I went so crazy overboard with visiting all the different countries. I was 3 nights here, 2 nights here, 24 hours here, and I was just go, 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 because I felt like I wasn't going to get another chance like this. When I go back to New Zealand, I would just stay in New Zealand. This is my one and only sort of one shot at exploring the world and all these places I'd ever wanted to see. And it's funny now because I go travel still everywhere all the time, and I live in Europe now. But at the time, I think it really came from this fear of when I go back, I'm never going to get a chance like this again. It was so fleeting, and it was so rooted in scarcity, obviously. I think I kept traveling because I didn't want to go back to a place that didn't feel like home, or that I felt caged in, that there were rules that I had to follow, there was a certain way I had to be or couldn't be. And I think that desire to seek freedom from that standpoint is what led me to travel for so long, because I felt like when I would finally stop traveling, when I would finally settle, then I would be caged back into a life that I wasn't happy, or that there were certain conditions I had to meet or ways I had to be that didn't feel aligned with what I wanted to do or be. I think when you grow up with very strict household, home feels like a cage. I don't really want to be home. And it felt safer for me to be traveling and to be away from home than it was to ever come back home. Did I ever imagine myself settling in one place when I started traveling? No, I kind of really didn't. I always thought it would be back in New Zealand, but when I did, it was like, it would be, I don't know, would have like children or something like that. I had a boyfriend, his family was in Germany, in the countryside. It was really beautiful, and that was home base for some years, you know, but it didn't feel like a place I was ready or willing to settle like it would have been for someone else. It would have been for him, not really for me, or not necessarily my choice of settling. Lisbon is that first place where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is for me. It's not for someone else. It's not for a man. It's not for my family. It's not for anyone else. It's for me. And that feels really empowering. And the third question in relation to that is like, were some of the unforeseen like hardships or challenges that I really faced being away from home, traveling for so long. And the things that come top of mind is definitely fleeting friendships and the amount of energy it costs you to continuously move. It's an insane amount of energy. Basically, if you don't have a strong foundation and you're always leaving, how can you ever build? Like, what are you building? You have nothing to build upon. And I didn't want fleeting friendships anymore. They were amazing. We would have friendships and it was like super strong and really deep, and then it would be like 3 months or 1 year, and then we would all go our separate ways. What are you building upon? You know, you're always starting fresh. You go from 0 to 10, and then you go back to 0, and you always go back to 0. And I was so sick of starting over again. I felt like nothing I built lasted. And I think that was the shift from like, I don't want to build things that don't last anymore. Like, the amount of energy it costs you to continuously move all the time. Same with friendships. It's like the amount of energy it costs to like start over. When I was moving and traveling all the time, you're like, okay, where am I living? Where's my neighborhood cafes? Where are my supermarkets? Your whole diet has to change every time you move places. Everything changes. Didn't realize this until I was in my third year of business, that I was struggling to grow my business because I didn't even have a stable foundation in my personal life. So how can you expect to grow a business and have a good foundation in your business when you yourself, the founder, you do not have a strong foundation in your personal life, and you are constantly being scattered, moving places, traveling, and you know, everybody sort of glorifies and glamorizes this work from anywhere, work remotely kind of thing. Nah, it's actually kind of fucking shit. You can't even enjoy the place that you're in. You're thinking about, oh my God, am I going to have good Wi-Fi in my house, in my Airbnb or my hotel or whatever? And you never know, it's always a gamble. It's fucking stressful. And you just can't relax and be present in the place that you're currently traveling. When I travel, I want to not bring work with me. My business has grown. What I'm chasing for in freedom was actually more or less like peace of mind and just peace in general. So yeah, I think those were the two main challenges that come to mind. Was there a moment that made you realize that you are now ready to settle down? Very good question. There wasn't any one particular moment. It was more of an accumulation of moments, especially because even though I moved to Lisbon, I would still leave Lisbon, you know, go away for some months at a time and come back. And every time I came back to Lisbon, I was so happy and so excited to come back. And it just felt like home. And I was just so excited to see my people again, my friends. And I never felt that with anywhere else, except for maybe Sevilla. You know, I was always excited and happy to go back to Sevilla, and I still am, right? So I think it was like home, what made me realize that this is a potential home base, because I genuinely look forward to and really love coming back home. I would go away and travel, and I'd be so happy being away and traveling. And when I would come back home, I'd be really sad that it ended, and I would be really sad that I was coming back to a place that didn't make me happy. The feeling of just enjoying coming back home is a really beautiful one. How did adopting a dog influence your decision? I think adopting Mishka was possibly the biggest stake in the pike. Like, you are now a responsible mom for a being. right, who depends on you, and you can't just up and leave like you used to without considering someone else in the picture. And so yeah, she influenced me massively. If we say yes to her, adopting her, then we are also consequently saying yes to like Lisbon being our home. And that felt really scary. It was like double whammy commitment, right? It's like all or nothing sort of thing. And in the end, what swayed my decision to adopting her and settling here was the fact that, let's imagine that we didn't. What were we doing? We would just continuously move countries, keep uprooting our life, going somewhere else. Because why? Because we're scared of going deeper in one place, because we're scared of growing roots and not being able to up and leave when we want to. Like, a lot of it was rooted in fear, the reason why I would not adopt her, why I would keep moving. And I think I was just ready to phase out of that fear, overcome that, and commit to something. Commitment used to feel really scary to me until a friend of mine, Nick, he said to me, nah babe, like commitment's fantastic because then you can actually build shit. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's so true. Like, the reason why, I can't build shit, why I can't build a home, why I can't grow my business is also because I'm just not willing to commit, because it felt so scary. And so this is why you'll always stay small if you do not commit to things. Same with relationships. Like, you will never have a marriage, a long-term partner that you desire if you are too scared to commit. Yes, so she definitely influenced my decision to create a more permanent home. Mishka, all the children playing, so sweet. What were some of the biggest adjustments in that transition from like being so used to traveling all the time and uprooting my life to then actually like sinking into a home? It was pretty difficult, but at the same time it felt really natural. The lifestyle that got me here to Lisbon is not going to be the same lifestyle or choices and habits that is going to get me to where the kind of lifestyle that I want to have in the future, which is to have a home and to have a family one day. That mental transition was easy. What was perhaps more difficult was like the habit of the FOMO, let's say, of people, my friends who are still in that lifestyle, traveling all the time, 3 months in Brazil, and then some time in Costa Rica, and then New York, and all the places, Mallorca, and I'm like, massive FOMO here, right? And so I think that was a bit difficult because people would ask me to join them, and I would love to say yes, but then I also have Mishka now, and it's not always so easy to find someone for Mishka. That's a lie, it is easy to find someone for Mishka. It's just that I don't want to leave. There's also this part of me which is like, oh, my dog gets to be my excuse now. Like, oh, I have a child, I have to take care of her. It's like, well, actually, the truth is, I like home. I like where I am at now. I like my apartment in Ajuda. It's so peaceful. I love my life. I love just coming out to the park and walking around the forest and just enjoying my little cafes that I frequent in my little hood. I love making art, working from my beautiful office space in my own apartment, and just all of these things. It's like, I love how regulated my nervous system feels when I'm here, and I know and I'm familiar with how unregulated my nervous system is when I am traveling, going to new countries and figuring all the stuff out, and kind of being in survival mode when I'm traveling. And I was addicted to that survival mode energy. And so that is just the very real honest answer of that, and to that particular question. Why Lisbon? Like, was there something particular that you liked about it? America's like, is it the healthcare system? And a lot of people think, maybe it's the beach, it's that it's cheap here in Portugal, cost of living, amalgamation of things. It's actually not as cheap as you think. I think Lisbon is potentially the most expensive place that I have ever chosen to live in. Actually, like, rent is pretty insane, and because I like my specialty coffees, that just lifestyle inflation is a thing, man. Okay, so no, like, if you're coming to Portugal, if you're coming to Lisbon for the cost of living, sorry to disappoint, it's really not. It's probably more expensive than what you're used to at home. maybe. If you come to Portugal, other areas of Portugal, incredibly affordable, especially, house prices outside of Lisbon. So that's one thing. Why did I come to Lisbon? I'm like water. I flow. And I've always flowed between all these different countries that I have lived in. It was so strange. Like just broken up with a long-term partner of mine. Moved back to Sevilla, and that was like where we were living together. I was just meditating a lot during that time. And it came to me in my meditations, you could say, like just the Tagus River, the bridge, and I can't shit you not. It's like, if you look at the view from my apartment now, that was what was in my meditation. And it gives me goosebumps, which is how everything came about. And that this place now feels like home. But that what I see out of my window is what I saw in my meditations. And I was like, I think I'm supposed to move to Lisbon. And so I moved to Lisbon, but I didn't want to move to the city. So I moved to this small town, surf village called Praia das Massas. So basically in Colares area. And I was there in a surf lodge for a few months. And then I moved to Cascais, so to be a little bit closer to the city, because I like the people in Lisbon more, but I didn't want to be in the city, I still wanted some of my nature. So I slowly moved closer and closer to Lisbon. Then I was in the city of Lisbon, Graça area. I was in Santos, Lapa, in the thick of it. And it was a bit too much for me. I didn't really love the busyness of it all. So then I moved a little bit further out, and now I'm in Ajuda, Belém area. And it's the perfect mix because, we have this forest of Monsanto, literally 5 minutes away. It's a lot more spacious now, especially having a dog as well. The reason why I felt called to come to Lisbon was that image in my meditation. The reason why I then stayed is different. I would say the people here is the main reason why I'm staying. A home, you can have the most beautiful home, you can have the best healthcare system, the best, everything, like Switzerland, you could have everything functioning well, but it lacks something, right? For me at least. Whereas here in Portugal, it's kind of the opposite. Things don't run particularly efficiently, let's be honest. Many things are very frustrating, and the streets can be really dirty. Yeah, it's not perfect, let's say, right? Just from a rational standpoint, if you were to make up your mind to move to a place, from a rational standpoint, it's doesn't quite hit the mark. But the reason why I stay is because of the people, and also, not gonna lie, the tax benefits is a bonus. What was another thing that was a bonus? The residency and the visa process. Obviously, I had already made up my mind that I want to live in Europe. I want to, hopefully also get citizenship in Europe. I really, it's not that I don't care where I do. It just happened to be such a bonus that, A, I love Portugal. B, I felt called to come to Portugal through my meditation. And C, it was the process on a silver platter, here you go. And so of course I applied for the visa, got it for 2 years, in the process of renewing that for 3 years. And then after the total of 5, if I pass the Portuguese test, then I apparently get my citizenship for Portugal. And it's after I get that, I still want to stay. It's not I'm just gonna get that and be scoot out. It's to me, it's home. The people here feel like home. And when I say the people, it's I love the Portuguese people. I think they're the kindest, such kind people, and so hospitable and warm. I actually mean the expats here. The digital nomads, the expats who have also had many homes in their lifetime, who run their own businesses. Most of them are entrepreneurs, and I think I feel at home with them because in some funny way, we are all sort of the black sheep of society, the black sheep of our community groups at home. We just never really fit in, and so we're kind of just a whole bunch of misfits. And it's especially funny during Christmas time when some people have homes to go back to, and then just a select few of us stay here. And it feels like we're the lost boys, the lost girls of Neverland. And we just, gather together and get up to some shenanigans and things like that. So I don't know, that's at least the feeling to me. It's like a band of misfits, and it's great because we all think differently, we all have our different perspectives. I would say most of the people here, expats, are very open-minded, not judgmental. Everybody has a different background, like a lot of mixed, fragmented identities and upbringings as well, and so I feel very at home in that. So that's really beautiful. And the final question is interesting. So did I wish I had just like come to Portugal earlier and not wasted all of those years sort of trying to find a home? No, I don't. And the reason being, I wasn't ready to settle, and I really needed all of those years of feeling lost, of finding myself slowly through all the different places I'd visited and all the different people I'd met, to then finally be in a place with myself and my own like evolution and growth, that when the opportunity presented itself and everything kind of came together, that I had the courage and the clarity to say yes and no, that this is what I want for my future. And I think had Portugal presented itself, you know, even 2 years, 3 years earlier, I would have butchered that opportunity. I really do believe in sort of things happening at the right time for the right reason as well. So no, I don't regret how it happened. And yet at the same time, my advice, what I would say to my younger self, it's like, maybe just think about that a little bit earlier. You know, like I did essentially spend the better part of my 20s sort of jumping around different visas, work and traveling, and like Norway, Sweden, Spain, Italy, Germany, Austria, like all these different kind of in-between visas and whatnot, all of that bureaucracy stuff. It's like, if I had accumulated all of that time I'd spent just jumping around, I would have already had my Portuguese citizenship, residency, you could say, right? And then I would just be free to move around and work in any country that I wanted to. So I don't regret it. And yet at the same time, my advice for other people who are maybe in their early 20s and let's say you want to move to Europe would be, hey, think about like, you know, do you see yourself in a place long term? And, you know, maybe it is worth committing a longer amount of time in one place than it is to keep hopping around, right? Because it does accelerate the process. It gives you freedom sooner. I think I had this really like twisted illusion of what freedom was. Like, to me, freedom was like, oh my God, I can like spend 1 year here, and, you know, 1 year in a different country, 1 year in a different country, I have this freedom. It's like, well, no, I don't, because after the year, I don't have the freedom. I have to keep applying for my freedom. Whereas if I just committed to one place, and maybe that feels like not freedom in the short term, but after 5 years, you have that unlimited freedom. So what is an illusion and what is actually reality? And I think I was just so caught up in like wanting to keep running and keep moving and not being in one place, because being in one place felt scary to me, that I wasn't ready to face that reality of what freedom actually is. So my advice to someone who is still balancing or torn between digital nomad lifestyle, travel, and then also having this deep desire to want to settle, ground yourself, and, you know, start a family in the future, for example, would be that you will know when the time is right. And I really believe that. And I think you really need to trust that you will know when the time is right. And this phase, if you're in your 20s, it's such a precious, fleeting moment in time where you get to be selfish. And please be the most selfish version of yourself in your 20s, because I really believe that like we need to give these opportunities to ourselves to discover, to explore, to experience. And only once that cup is so full to the brim do you then feel like, okay, it can overflow now, and I can grow some roots, and I get to also like almost water your roots from your overflow in that sense. And I don't think, I mean, many people try to tell me like, even if I went back to tell myself, Emily, you know, it's so nice settling down. You will be so at peace and you will be so happy. Like, I don't think that I would have listened to myself because I wasn't ready to. And there is a time, space and time where you are ready to settle, ready to take in this perspective, this advice, and ready to allow yourself to root, ready to allow yourself to just settle, be, grow on top of commitments, to grow on top of foundations, and to really build a sturdy foundation. I think there is a place and time for that. But you know, if you're in your early 20s, you're like, oh, I want that, but I don't feel like I'm ready for that yet. You're probably not, and that's totally fine. You know, when you do finally get there, like I always knew in the back of my mind that my nomadic years were a phase, and I think that's potentially a reason why I felt like this pressure to like do more, see more, because I knew it was going to be a phase and it was going to end at some point in time, and that made me really sad. But actually now being on the other side of that, I don't feel sad that it's ended. I feel so grateful and so happy that it happened. And so, okay, so last two questions. One is, how do I balance freedom and stability? And the second one is, how do you start, you know, finding your home when you are and feel ready for it? I have really had to heal my relationship with stability here. But essentially, stability is freedom. And that took me way too long to figure out, because I saw stability as something that was like boring and almost like a noose around my neck and chaining me down. And I think this year I've had many conversations with people who have stability, who are very grounded people. And I'm like, but isn't your life boring? Don't you want to like be free to like do everything whenever you want and da 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 da? I'm more or less chaos, and my friends, I tend to attract friends who are a bit more stable in that sense. Took me a lot of rewiring my own nervous system to come to terms with the fact that actually, yes, and needing to then live it for myself, right? First healing my relationship with stability, then living it for myself and being like, now I really do have a very stable life. And yes, actually, I do feel like I have more freedom than I did before when I was total chaos. Like when I was total chaos, it's the illusion that you have or are freedom, but it's not, it's an illusion. The second question, how do you start defining what your definition of home is? Like, what is home essentially? Last thing I'll leave with is like, for those of you who are still finding your home and you don't know where that is, it feels like you're never going to find home. Believe me, I know that feeling. Like, I thought I was destined to just forever be on the run, and I was okay with it. You know, I like being on the run. But for those who are like, okay, how do I know? What if I have found home, but I'm just not willing to admit it or see it? Or what if I have found home? How do I know if this is the place that I'm supposed to, you know, stay in, settle, etc.? It's like, on the one side, if you're an intuitive person, you will just know. Like, there will be signs and you will just know. I can only speak from my experience, which is that for me, how I knew this was home is probably three things. One, and I've spoken about this already in the video, one is every time I come home from being overseas, I feel so happy and excited and lucky to call this place home. And I just love coming home. And that's how I know. Secondly is the people. Like, I feel like I have family here, even though I don't have anyone in my family here. And I would say thirdly, my nervous system feels so regulated. Like, it's such a wonderful feeling. Living life here. I have the most regulated nervous system I have had in my entire life. And I think the mixture of those three things points to this feeling of this cozy feeling of home. And so I hope in some ways, you know, sharing my story, that if this even, I don't know, resonates with one person out there, then I feel grateful. And with these, there's really no other purpose to sharing this video other than just wanting to share it and knowing that there are a lot of people out there who are a little bit lost, especially with all the opportunities out there of like freedom and digital nomad lifestyles, etc. So I'm going to end it there. I'm going to continue walking down back home. Hope you have a wonderful day, and it was a pleasure to share my story with you.